Good evening, and thanks so much for joining us for My Week. I'm Christy McDonald. Big focus on Lansing and a lot of money this week. There are negotiations on that $350 million to seal the grand bargain for Detroit's bankruptcy. Will the rest of the state buy in? Also tonight, disappointing graduation rates for Michigan, how the state plans to tackle it. And there is anger over the state's policing of Belle Isle. Should the unique location be handled differently than other state parks? But we begin tonight with the latest negotiations to help Detroit out of bankruptcy with millions from the state. Emergency Manager Kevin Orr spent 2 days in Lansing meeting with lawmakers explaining why they should support this. The governor says there is some progress, but House leadership wants to change up the deal. We are going to start there tonight with Nolan Finley from the Detroit News. Stephen Henderson is off tonight, so joining us is Nancy Kaffer, a columnist and also part of the editorial board of the Detroit Free Press. Nolan, Nancy, welcome to My Week.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Be here.
So let's start off the conversation about what was going on in Lansing this week. I'd love to have been a fly on the wall in those rooms as some of those meetings were taking place. What were you getting out of it, Nolan?
Well, we always knew this was going to be a tough sell. You don't go to Lansing and say, gosh, we want $350 million for Detroit and expect all of these outstate lawmakers to just line up and say, okay. So it was going to be a tough sell. I think in the end, Kevin Orr made his case, and in the end, the money's going to come through, but I don't know what sort of machinations you're going to see over the next week or two, what other deals are going to have to be cut to get there. It's not easy to get that kind of money out of the legislature.
I know, because I was going to say, you sound fairly confident that somewhere along the line this deal is going to get done. Sure. But Nancy, we've been talking about this now for probably about 2+ months, where the leadership has been knowing that that's what they're going to need to do is to talk about this $350 million. What problems do you see cropping up?
Well, yeah, as Nolan said, it's a hard sell to some of the outstate folks. But it has to happen. It's going to happen. It's just working out the details of how it will happen. You know, Jace Bolger, the Speaker of the House, has said that there needs to be some money contributed to this grand bargain that's going to protect the DIA and help protect some Detroit pensions. The unions need to cough up some cash for that. Is that really a thing that he's going to insist on, or is that a bargaining tactic to try to get maybe some other things on his agenda, some traction on that with the governor? It's going to remain to be seen, but the deal's going to get done. It's just what it's going to look like, and how the governance probably of the pension funds and what kind of oversight we see for Detroit after the deal gets done.
And Bolger's not necessarily wrong on that. In New York City, the unions did kick in money to help solve that city's fiscal crisis.
But that was never part of the original conversation, I think, when they finally got to this point where all of a sudden he pulled out of nowhere.
You also have to consider
it wasn't out of nowhere. He has been talking about it, but it never made it to the mediation table. It's too late now, and he's got no leverage because, his only leverage would be if the unions themselves wanted this deal. And you still have asked me not trying to block this deal. They would love nothing more than if Bolger scuttled it. So he's got no leverage to bring him to the table and get any money out of him.
Is he just poking a stick at the unions to try to get something else?
That's definitely one of the things I would imagine is going on, is that if he can, not just at the unions, with the governor, there's a lot of debate going on right now about roads and how they're going to get fixed and whose plan for roads is going to be adopted and whose income tax cut plan is going to go forward. You use these bargaining chips any way you can to try to push your own agenda. But, one thing that seems to get lost in this conversation is that union workers in Detroit have already taken some pretty steep cuts to pay and benefits, that retirees are taking cuts to pensions. So it's not as though union membership has not contributed to helping bring the city back to solvency, hopefully.
But they're sitting on these big reserve funds still. And you've had third parties kick in who really have very little stake other than altruism in this process. And it's not an unreasonable request. It's just not going to happen.
And do we really think that Jace Bolger's sole interest is in getting the unions to contribute at the table, or in possibly draining the reserves of an organization that supports Democratic candidates right before a statewide election?
Both are admirable goals.
Well, I don't think that you get everyone to agree with you on that one, Nolan. I want to talk about bigger picture, because I think this also does, when you're talking about this $350 million and what the state will contribute, you are also looking at what is the city of Detroit going to be like coming out of bankruptcy, and what are some of those parameters that are going to be in place to make sure that there is not a financial emergency like this again. So how does this set up some of the limits and what could happen in a potential consent agreement and oversight coming out of bankruptcy?
Well, ongoing oversight has been part of the conversation from the beginning. That's not a new thing. It was articulated this week, but the governor's been talking about it from the beginning. Kevin Orr's been talking about it from the beginning. They're not simply going to walk away after bankruptcy and say, okay, have at it. Detroit's going to have to prove it can manage itself. There's been a lot of money invested here, and the state's not just going to walk away without some ongoing input into that. And in truth, it's to Detroit's benefit to have that, because the bond markets will want to see some evidence that there's a third-party oversight here, so the city doesn't walk back into the same place it was in. So I think it's to everybody's benefit to have a check for a while on the city's ability until we see whether the city can do it.
It's interesting, though, you say a while, though. How long would that be, Nancy?
New York had the MAC board oversight for 30 years after its brush with bankruptcy. I don't know if we need to be looking at a 30-year time frame, but as Nolan said, this has always been part of the conversation, that there would be ongoing oversight after the bankruptcy was over. This shouldn't be shocking to anyone. What form will it take? Who will be those people who are on that board? This is all going to be worked out. This is all imminently work-outable.
3 to 5 years, I would think would be. I mean, they're just looking for some evidence of change in the culture at City Hall, and a sense that there's going to be fiscal responsibility and discipline. Nobody wants to be back here in 5 years.
I want to talk a little bit about, again, when we talk about the state buying in, and they don't want to call this a bailout of Detroit, and we know that Detroit is a very unique circumstance, but we are looking at a state that has several municipalities who are in financial trouble. And once we get buy-in from the state to support Detroit coming out of this bankruptcy, and again, it is a unique circumstance, and people understand that. What do other cities around the state who have this kind of financial trouble, are they looking down the line and saying, well, if Detroit got help financially, can we expect that kind of help from the state? Nancy, let me ask you.
So I'm going to take this from the other end, which is that there are cities all over the state that are having these same problems, being able to afford their pensions, their retiree health care promises that they made. And I think we've seen ample evidence that the way that we fund cities in this state is not really working anymore. The way we cap property tax collection, just the way that we just wasted revenue has dropped in cities. The state needs to be looking at the state doesn't want to be on the hook for a series of bailouts, if you will, around the state. The state needs to be looking at a more global solution for how to fix the way we fund cities.
We've certainly established a precedent here, and you've got Flint now talking about going into bankruptcy. If Flint goes into bankruptcy, how do you tell Flint you're not going to get the same sort
How
of
do you tell Flint?
that Detroit did? You can't. And that was the danger with this whole bailout idea, is that once you bail out one community, how do you not bail out the next?
Which is why we have to be looking for a state solution, because this is not a unique problem. The retiree health care piece overshadows the pension issue in terms of not having enough money to pay for it. Look at a list of cities around the state that have not funded or funded their retiree health care promises at very low levels. It's shocking. Cities you wouldn't even imagine had these problems are funding their retiree health care at like 26% or 13% or 0%. And it's just a problem that is not going to go away. It can't be fixed outside of bankruptcy, because, as we saw in Flint, alterations to retiree health care have been challenged in court and have been overturned. You have to go to bankruptcy if you want to fix these. So it seems like a much better way to figure out a better way to fund these things. State needs to be thinking about this. This is something that has to be on their plate unless we want to see a lot of cities headed into bankruptcy.
Okay, well, I would love to see it on their plate, but is it happening? Are those talks happening simultaneously with what's happening right now?
Doesn't it seem to be?
I mean, you look at the state's needs. It needs more money for its universities. It needs more money for its roads. It's not going to do a massive revenue increase and a massive tax increase to bail out cities or to fund cities that still are poorly run, poorly managed.
It doesn't have to be a bailout. We could, change the way that we handle property tax collection. There's some things that could change the way cities are able to
When you say
capture.
change the way, you mean raise property taxes?
No, I'm talking about how when you sell a property and the rate pops up, you then have to decrease the amount you're collecting in other places. The city decreases the amount of tax it's collecting. There's some fixes that would be relatively relatively minor to what we as residents feel that could do that. There are other options like making a state pool so that cities could bond out via the state to pay these for the money to fund these retiree health care promises. It's not necessarily raising taxes and giving money to cities. There's some ways that we could address this, pooling retiree health care essentially with the state to get better rates, to have better oversight.
Well,
some ways to fix this that don't involve raising taxes.
I think we still have to look at the promises we've made and be completely honest that we can't sustain them forever. I mean, the one really bad thing about this Detroit bankruptcy and the sort of warning ahead is it's very likely we're going to come out of this process and the city of Detroit will still be promising pensions to future employees instead of switching over to a 401k style plan. I mean, that is not sustainable, and we have to get ahead of this. We have to talk to these employees in these cities. They've got to get on a more realistic footing in terms of their retiree benefits.
No question that these legacy benefits are unsustainable, but it's something that cities just don't really have the power to alter without some sort of emergency manager, bankruptcy.
Well, you could do that through
state legislation. It's very difficult to renegotiate those things.
All right, let me bring it back as we finish up our conversation about the grand bargain. You say it's going to happen eventually. What is our timeline now? Are we looking at the end of May?
Yeah, I think you've got to look at the end of May. The governor wants his budget done by June 1st, and you can't get your budget done unless you get this piece of it. I think this idea of paying the money up front, so you take the amount down to 198 million instead of 350 million, that may be a little easier for the legislature to take. Pay it up front, bond it out, and pay it off with tobacco money. Much better approach probably than dragging it out over 20 years and fighting about the appropriation every year.
All right, let's move on tonight. A new report out this week shows Michigan is still in the bottom third of the nation when it comes to high school graduation rates. The national average in 2012 was 80%. Michigan is at 76%, which is actually up 2 percentage points than the year before. The state superintendent says recent early education spending will eventually make a difference down the road in keeping students in school. Is that enough? Let me ask you that, Nancy. I'm going to start with you on that.
So early education funding is one of the most proven ways to boost school performance. You get, I forget what the return on investment is per dollar, but it's pretty impressive. You got to start early, got to help kids get ready for school, can continue to have those contacts with them throughout school that keep at-risk kids in school and doing well. But yeah, early education funding will make a big difference, in my opinion.
That's not that, but you don't see that payoff then for 18, 20 years down the road.
And that's the problem where people want to see some kind of immediate return.
And we have to. We can't go another 5 years even, graduating only 3 out of 4 children, failing 1 out of 4 children. That guarantees a poverty rate in this state above 20%. Because if you don't graduate from high school, you're going to prison, you're going on to welfare, you're going to be poor. You are not going to be part of this new economy, this high-skilled manufacturing economy that Michigan is building. And the state is not going to be as competitive as it should be. Early childhood, yeah, try it, but we got to do something now to make sure the kids in high school today graduate.
And are they doing anything in Lansing right now, Nancy? Are there things in the works that could quite potentially help in that regard?
Yeah, they take a stab at doing something every so often. We've got the education.
They fight mostly.
Huh?
They fight.
They do. We have the Educational Achievement Authority, which is supposed to have all the most, the worst schools in the state in that district, in the reform district, to try to improve them. We really haven't seen enough results from that district to figure out if it's working yet or not. I mean, they're trying something, which is good, but it's been incredibly controversial, and we don't know if it's going to work. One of the big differences I see between Michigan and some of the other states that have similar demographic makeup but are doing better than us in terms of graduation rate is, once again, the way we fund schools. We're so fragmented here. Every community has its own school district. Like Louisiana, I think, was one of the states called out in this report that has similar poverty levels and things like that, that is exceeding Michigan in high school graduation rate. They have parish-wide school districts. They have parishes instead of counties. It's not broken up into, in a lot of places at least, they may have city school districts in some of the larger areas, but it's just not broken up here, where there's the funding here, whether you have a good school system or a bad school system, is really specifically tied to how affluent your community is.
And I think funding is a huge part of it, but it's also the programs that are in place in these various schools, and you wonder how much dialogue there are between the districts and between what successful programs are in some places that aren't so successful.
Well, funding is probably the least part of this. Increasing school funding does not improve school results unless you put fundamental reforms in place. And you've got states like Florida, Tennessee pushing well ahead of us because they're a decade ahead of us in terms of adopting reforms that have proven to work, of evaluating their schools a little more closely, of holding both schools and teachers to higher standards, of working individually with children. And they're pushing ahead of us. And they're pushing ahead of us basically with the same amount of money. But we're up in Lansing still fighting over basic reforms that other states have adopted. And as long as we do that, we are not going to progress.
You know, I used to cover K through 12 education in Dearborn Heights, and I'm sorry to pick on Dearborn Heights, but they have 4 different school districts, each at the time I was covering those districts, with a superintendent making more than $100,000 a year, with a separate administration for every school district. I mean, the way that we're so fragmented is a problem.
Oh, it definitely is.
Duplication of effort, and it's a waste of money.
For our municipalities too, we've got too many local units of government, and you could free up more funds and have more efficiencies by consolidating, by merging districts, but you still have the basic problem here that we've put adult interest ahead of kids' interest in the state for too long.
Last word on this, Nancy.
People like to say that putting more money into a school district doesn't improve results, but I have yet
Not without reform.
I have yet to see a list of of school districts in impoverished communities that are turning out really great schools. I mean, you can say it's not connected, but we all know that
a whole other set of issues on that. I mean, if you have affluent parents, you're going to have better performing children. There's a lot of factors that go into this beyond strictly per pupil funding.
All right, just a quick reminder for you that Detroit Public TV is part of a nationwide effort called American Graduate, which addresses the dropout issue in our state. And recently, I hosted a Michigan town hall on education. You can check that out at MiWeek.org. Moving on now to Belle Isle tonight, there has been an uproar over enforcement on the island since the state took over operations this winter. Detroit City Council President Brenda Jones railed on Michigan State Police this week for what she calls excessive traffic stops, which included the city clerk and Mayor Mike Duggan for speeding. She also said officers needed sensitivity training. MSP has defended their patrols. You know, not all state parks are alike. Should they be patrolled differently? Is that the question here, Nancy? And I'm going to start with you because I know you wrote a column this week in the Detroit Free Press about it.
So we've got kind of a culture shock here because for a long time, this is a problem all over the city. We have under-resourced police officers who don't have enough cops. They don't have enough stuff to do their jobs the way they want to do them. And so we have a city where people have kind of gotten accustomed to doing whatever they want, and now you have state police who are not accustomed to people just doing whatever they want, and they're pulling people over. They're arresting folks who have warrants. They're arresting people with open intoxicants in the car, people who have weed in the car. It's a change of expectation, and I think it's going to take some time for folks to get used to. But when you look at the number of traffic stops versus the number of actual tickets issued, it seems like there's a lot of warnings being given, which is good, kind of easing into it. But there's a bigger issue, which is that there's a lot of fear and mistrust about this state management of Belle Isle. A lot of people in Detroit felt like maybe they wouldn't be welcome on the island anymore, or maybe it wouldn't be a real Detroit park anymore. And so there is an issue with, I've talked to people who are not doing anything wrong, who said that they weren't pulled over, who said that they were out driving around the island, were followed by cops for a while. It can make you feel unwelcome, even if you're not doing anything wrong. So there's a line to walk there.
And it's a park, not a prison, and you have to keep in mind that people are there to have a little bit of fun and relax. But that island has been a pretty raucous place, and it hasn't had a great deal of rule enforcement over the years. And I think what the state police are trying to do now is establish the idea that things have changed, and that if you're going to come to the island, there are a set of expectations and rules you're going to have to follow. I think a lot of people are being stopped now, given warnings because they don't have the park pass on their license. That's a new thing most people don't know about. I think there's going to be a shakeout period here, but the reality is things have changed. That island is now a state park, and state parks are run differently.
It was funny that Mayor Mike Duggan said he's just kind of watch and wait. He wasn't bothered by the fact that he was pulled over for speeding, and yes, he was speeding. And he said it was funny that the officer didn't know who he was. They pulled him over. And he said, you have a city-owned vehicle. What do you do for the city? And he said, oh, I'm the mayor. But was the council president wrong in calling out the enforcement here on Belle Isle? Do you think there was an overreaction, or do you think it was justified in terms of this is part of the growing pains of what's happening?
So yes and no. It is. It sounds crazy to have an elected official suggesting that law enforcement shouldn't be doing their jobs and they're somehow wrong to be enforcing laws. But I think that she is sort of responding to this broader concern that people won't be welcome on Belle Isle. However, inelegantly she phrased it, that there is this fear in the community that folks won't be welcome on the island, that it won't be the place where you can go to kick back and have fun. But yeah, in general, I'm going to go with elected officials should probably not be criticizing law enforcement for enforcement.
Last word, Nolan.
She was a little knee-jerk. I think she should have taken a little more time to see what the real story was out there. You've got a lot of the folks who are in charge of running the island saying, it's not happening. The police are doing the job. I think there's a balance, and we got to find it.
All right, time now for some quick headlines. A couple of other stories that caught our eye this week. There is a challenge to Congressman John Conyers getting on the ballot, and Wayne County teetering on the financial edge, still working on that plan to get out of debt. I want to start first off with Wayne County. They are still working on this plan, their debt reduction plan. And so far the state is kind of shaking their head saying perhaps you are not on the right track. Nancy, fill me in on that.
Well, what they've said is that this deficit elimination plan requires buy-in from a lot of different folks, the other elected officials in Wayne County, the unions, the Wayne County Commission, and the state has said we're not so sure everyone's on board with this. They're still working on the plan. They have till the end of June to get to submit it and to kind of get some of the sign-offs they need from the commission, from unions. So, if they can't get folks to say that they'll pull together on this plan, it's going to be really hard to get the cuts and efficiencies they need to eliminate their deficit, or actually impossible.
And I was going to say, I think you put it really lightly when they said they're not quite sure they have everybody on board on this one. I'm thinking that they don't have anyone on board yet with this. The commissioners, no one.
Get them on board. It's a contentious mess in Wayne County. They don't work together. They fight each other. Unions aren't going to sign on. The sheriff, prosecutor, other independent elected officials aren't going to go along because they don't have to. State's going to have to figure out a way to put an emergency manager in place there without having all of these other elected officials subvert the effort. And that's the problem with the emergency manager in a county. The manager won't necessarily be able to rein in these other elected officials.
So you think this is a foregone conclusion, that there is going to be some kind of financial oversight at Wayne County?
Something's going to happen because they're not going to be able to do it themselves.
And their pensions are 45% funded, which is we're all so concerned about Detroit's pension funding, and they're not close to 45%. They're much better than 45%.
Now we learned the county commissioners who were part-time workers, when the charter revision was passed, they were put in as part-time workers. Now they're drawing pensions. Now they've bought themselves into this pension system. I mean, this is just a self-serving mess over there.
But any state intervention is also complicated by the fact that we have an election that will essentially be decided in August for the Wayne County executive position. Kind of makes when and how the state intervenes politically touchy.
And part of that plan also includes spinning off their waste treatment, which would take quite a lot to do in the next, 6 weeks, 8 weeks?
Yeah, if they can.
I gotta say, when I read their deficit elimination plan, it reminded me of the kind of stuff that Detroit sent off to the state for years. We're going to get these concessions. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And it's just cool. And if I won the lottery, I would buy you all beautiful resort homes.
The county's in
and we'd hold you to that, Nan.
The county's in worse shape than Detroit was when it went under state control by a long ways.
All right, and we would not have an election year without somebody being threatened to be pulled off the ballot or someone being challenged in their petition. Congressman John Conyers and his opponent, Horace Sheffield, has now challenged his petitions to even get on the ballot. And really what the challenge is the petitioners themselves, if they were registered voters.
People gathering the signatures.
Right.
You had 2 circulators, petition circulators, who were not on the qualified registered voter list on Monday night, and on Tuesday morning they were. And I think we got to get to the answer to how that happened. I mean, there's a lot of shady business going on here.
All right, Nancy, you get the last word on this one tonight.
Yeah, we see this happen a lot of times in the last few years of people who are really experienced politicians having problems with their petitions. It's like, guys, come on, you should. That
should be the easy
the
part.
smallest hurdle of all, and if you can't clear that one.
And yet it got McCotter, it got Duggan. I mean,
yeah, this is what's going on here, guys.
Oh, we'll have to see what happens from there. And that is going to do it for My Week. Our thanks to guest Nancy Kaffer from the Detroit Free Press. Check out MiWeek.org and find us on social media, Facebook and Twitter at MyWeek. I'm Christy McDonald. Have a great weekend, and we will see you next Thursday. Good night.
Recently, Michigan's economy has begun to turn around. Michigan's gained over 250,000 new jobs. We've paid off $20 billion in long-term debt. And our population is increasing for the first time in a decade. But to make Michigan a top 10 state, there's still plenty of work to be done. Step up and help put Michigan on top. Learn what you can do at MichiganTurnaroundPlan.com.
Funding is also provided by Delta,